Hi there. I think I'll just wait for a couple more minutes. Oh, there we are. Yeah, I think I'll just wait for a moment or two. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I think you'll, well, let me just wait a moment here. It's right exactly 4 o'clock. Okay, well, it's just right 4 now, so I think I'll jump in. And again, welcome to the presentation this afternoon, the webinar on why it's still important to take the SAT, the ACT, and what you have to gain. So today's presentation is brief. I'm just going to get right to the point. It's only about 15 minutes. And if you have a question during the presentation at any time, please put it in the chat. And at the end, I will be addressing questions. For those of you that do not know me, for over 30 years now, I've been coaching students on these standardized tests, and my students get exceptional results. It's a matter of just being committed, focused, and they do great. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I think will help you navigate your way through this rather confusing time right now. Okay. That, I think I'll jump right in, and I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so here we are. This is just the welcome slide. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today, the standardized test. Every day I have parents and students call me and they say something more or less like the following. Hey, I hear the tests are optional at many schools. Does this mean I don't have to take them? So I can just skip them, right? Well, the answer is definitively not. You need to take them and you need to achieve your best score. And now I'm going to tell you why. I usually don't focus a great deal on the money aspect, but today let's talk about money as it relates to college because it's a very large investment for almost all families, probably their second largest investment. Now, from a funding standpoint, taking the SAT and the ACT is not optional. They're essential. So what I mean by that is if you just want admission to a college, the tests are not essential. If you want money, the tests are critical. So let's take a closer look at how this works. So you want to go to college. That basically means you have 4 different options in terms of how you're going to pay for it. And we're going to run through each one of these. So the first one is you pay for it yourself. The second one, you can borrow the money. Option number 3, you can get recruited as a star athlete. And option number 4, you can get merit money. So we're going to look at each one of these a little more carefully and see what they involve. So the first one, paying for it yourself, that's pretty straightforward. Perhaps you have the savings, maybe you have an inheritance, maybe the children's grandparents are paying the tuition bill, or maybe you just won the lottery. But at any rate, it's pretty much what it says. You have the money, you are going to pay for it. Let's, now, what this means, college is very expensive, as I'm sure you know. And right now, the average public university, so this would be a school like UC Berkeley, one of the UC campuses, they're running about 35,000 a year. State schools would be in there too, a little less. If you move up to a average private college, the tuition is going to go up to about 57,000. And for an elite private college, it will go up to 75, 80, maybe even 85,000 each year. Now, if you're making roughly about 250,000 per year, universities expect you to pay 20 to 25% of your income towards college. Now, as most folks spend pretty much what they make each month, most families don't have an extra 6 to 7,000 lying around each month to pay a college bill. Let's look at these figures a little more closely. So, as you can see, most families are faced with a rather challenging problem of how they're going to pay for college. Now, historically, college costs have risen at about 2 to 3 times the consumer price index inflation rate. If a family's paying for kindergarten through 12th grade at private schools, the problem is this challenge is significantly multiplied. So let's take a look at the real cost of college and one of the most common forms of grant money. Now, this graph is really quite interesting. It shows the percentage increase in several consumer prices, food, shelter, healthcare, and tuition from 1978 up to about 2017. Now you can see the tuition line, the bright green line, that has gone up over 1,000%, actually 1,225% since 1978. It's significantly more than you can see the shelter medical posting. It shows the amount of money for the Pell Grant, which is one of the most common. Oh, I'm hoping this is not going to be a problem. There's been some technical complications here. So my apologies, and I'm going to move forward and hope this continues. Okay, so this graph shows the grant money that it's one of the most popular forms of grants available to students. In 1978, roughly about 3,000, 4,000, and in 2017, it hasn't even reached 6,000. So you can easily see that the rise in tuition has far surpassed the rise in grant money available. So let's take a look at option number 2. You decide that you want to borrow the money. Well, should you decide to do this, then you will be joining the other 44.7 million Americans who owe 1.64 trillion in student debt. Doesn't sound like a very attractive option, does it? Now, I'm not trying to make light of it, but I am going to show you this cartoon here that shows a student coming out from college with their parents there. And the parents say they started out with nothing, which actually is a great deal more than the student who is shouldering a 4 to 5 figure student loan debt when he leaves college. Okay, let's move on to option number 3. You want to be a star, or you are a star. You want that athletic money. You want to be a star athlete and get recruited by a great school. Well, again, this is a very good option, but unfortunately, everyone is not a star athlete. So this avenue is not open to everyone. This leads us directly to option number 4, which is merit money. So what exactly is merit money, and how can you increase your chances of getting it? Well, merit money is the money that a college awards a student based on their merit, which means their grades and their test scores. It's an award, so unlike a loan, you don't have to pay it back. This is exactly where I come in. The strategy is to get excellent test scores. In addition to high grades, it is much, much easier to raise a test score than it is a GPA. You can raise a test score in a matter of weeks, 1 month, maybe 2. To raise your GPA takes years. And parents ask me every day, well, my son or my daughter has excellent grades. Isn't that enough? Well, the answer is no, it is not enough. With great grades alone, students simply do not stand out from their competition. They do stand out with a great test score. Like one of my students says, there's a short video of her on my website. I invite you to take a look at that, and one by her father. Just to let you know, my website is tutoringforsuccess.biz. Anyway, she's on there and she says that a great test score puts you in a completely different league from the other students. That particular student received $320,000 from her dream college when we raised her score over 300 points. And since then, I've had over 12 top universities and colleges in the country award each of my students $320,000 because their test scores were so superb. So, how does a student get a great score? Well, that's really quite an interesting question. I've been doing this over 30 years, and I've come to see that just about any student can get a great score. You don't need to be a genius. You don't even have to be that smart to get a great score. What you do need is you need to understand exactly how the exam is put together. Meaning you know precise strategies that will allow you to unlock the answers, to make almost every problem a success, an achievable point toward a top score. And this is exactly what I help my students with. I give them the strategies they need to unlock the test. I show them how to translate the test into easily identifiable components and step by step show them how to apply the strategies to each type of problem. So it's really that straightforward. You can get a top score by learning the strategies, practicing them, and repeating. So I'm going to unshare right now and go back to the main screen. So far, I've been speaking of money and how the test can help students receive merit money. The other main reason to take the test is to give the student an opportunity to stand out from their competition for the diminishing number of places at colleges. I'm sure you've heard it too. I hear everyone, parents and students alike, every year talk about how difficult it is to get into a select college today. They say that it's much harder than it used to be. And they're actually correct about this. But the reasons for the increasing difficulty are not well understood. Yes, the population has increased, but the number of teenagers is not too much higher than it was 35 years ago when the youngest baby boomers were still applying to college. So what exactly is going on here? Simply put, colleges are admitting fewer American students than they did a generation ago. It actually is much more difficult to get into a selective school than it was for today's 45 to 55-year-olds. An example of this is the number of spots filled by American students at Harvard dropped 27% since 1994. Many colleges look to foreign students as important sources of revenue, particularly the undergraduate students, who typically do not receive financial aid and they pay significantly higher tuition rates than their American counterparts. For example, Columbia has over 30% of its students from abroad. This is compounded by the stagnant growth of new American colleges. UC Merced was the first UC to be built in 40 years, the first college since UC Santa Cruz opened in 1965. So I have a couple just brief points to make, but I wanted to take a look and see if anyone has written a question in the chat, or let's see, in the question and answers. Okay, I don't see any in the question of answers, and I don't see any in the chat either. So if you have one, please write it down and I can address it. As I mentioned, this webinar is short. I'm going to mention two brief other points. The test-taking strategies are very helpful for regular school classes. My students tell me this every day. They apply the strategies to any standardized test. I had a student just recently, I was coaching her on test-taking strategies, and in her physics class, she wasn't doing so well. And then she got an A on her physics exam. And her teacher asked her how she managed to get an A. And she said, oh, I just applied the strategies my SAT tutor taught me. So that is an extra bonus when the student learns the strategies. And the last thing I'd like to leave you with is that rather than think about why you should take the test or I don't need to take it, I would completely turn that question inside out or upside down. And I think it would be far more insightful to ask, what have you got to lose? I can't think of one good reason not to take the test. Perhaps it definitely is going to take a little time to prepare, but if a student makes the commitment, prepares for the test, the sky's the limit. The benefit in that perspective. Why wouldn't you take the test? The question that popped in here. Are juniors this year taking the SAT? Well, as I said in the beginning, a lot of parents and students don't think they need to because they're optional. I'm recommending the students take them. It's been very tricky to get a test date this fall. Supposedly there's one scheduled for March. I'm personally encouraging the juniors to sign up for two, let's say March and June, in case the March one doesn't go through. So even if a college is optional test, I'm encouraging students to take it. I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? The worst thing that's going to happen is the student's going to take the test, they're not going to like their score, and they don't send it to a college. But what if they prepare and they do fantastic? That would just be another way that they could stand out from their peers. Let's see. I have one more question here. When should you start prepping and studying for the SAT? Now, that's an excellent question, and it depends a great deal on the student and the family. I have students that really want to prepare in the summer when they don't have the pressure of their normal school year. So they might start with me the summer before their junior year. I have other students that have very challenging athletic schedules in the spring, and they travel a great deal with their particular team, whether it's swimming or whatever it is. And so they just cannot put in the number of hours in the spring that they want to. So they prefer to start in the fall, and they might do 70, 75% of the preparation. And then we'll do the last quarter sometime in the spring. And we could do that same pattern for the ones that start in the summer. Other kids, they're just want to start basically right now in January, mid-January, and they're focused on taking the March SAT. You really can't start too early. Um, there's two things one needs to do for this test. Number one is you need to understand the strategies. And secondly, you need to have practice applying them. Now, to be honest with you, most kids find that the strategy is quite challenging. They've never seen them before. They're awkward. They probably even slow them down in the beginning. But virtually 100% of my students, 100%, every single one, tells me they're going to use them once we learn them because they're much faster and they're much easier. So when you should start prepping really is what works best for the student. If the student's ready to go, can make that commitment. And as I said there, it's really helpful for the school too. Oh, here pops another question. Should you take the SAT and the ACT? Well, I would probably recommend choosing one. They're getting more and more alike since the SAT revamped it a few years ago. But I would probably choose one. You can give me a call, and I can go into some of the details on them in terms of how to choose which one to take. Most students take a sample one when they're in school, so they get a feeling for that. So some kids prefer the format of one versus the other. Their format is a little different. So I would pinpoint which one you want to take and then 100% focus on that. I definitely would not recommend preparing for both of them at the same time. I think that would weaken rather than strengthen the students' opportunities. So let's see, that's 3 questions. Does anyone have a last minute question? These are excellent. I don't see one there. So I think that's it. Then I will choose to end this. Copy of this webinar, I can also send that to you. And best of luck. Best of luck. And just go out there and get your top score. That's what I tell my students every day. Their job is to just do the best they can. My job is to make their life easier. Okay, thank you so much for attending, and I hope to be in touch soon.